morning. Welcome to Viewpoint, your program with personalities, politicians, and perspectives. This morning we have perspectives and a personality, too, really. Mrs. Busby is going to introduce this handsome young man in just a minute or two. Kudos. Viewpoint always tries to start out with a kudo, too. And we've had them in the studio as our guests, folks who are doing the courthouse dome work up there. And if you drive around, you got to keep your eye on the road. But if you glance up at the courthouse, they finally got the...
oh, my, yes.
The
wrapping.
Yeah, it's wrapped. That's fair enough. If I got... Boy, that had to be a tough, cold job. This
oh, boy. Well,
blowing.
the wind, here in Logan County, we got one pimple at Elkhart. Otherwise, it's flat. So if the wind gets going, there's nothing to stop.
Well, in any event, they're working at it diligently. That's got to be a tough job. Let's get right down to serious business. We have a serious subject matter this morning.
Yes.
April 15th coming up. And that, more than somebody's birthday, that's what they call Uncle Sam's Day. So let's introduce the man who helps people approach that day.
Yes, we're very happy to have with us today.
A storied name. Storied name in construction in Logan County. Fitzpatrick. Go right ahead, my dear.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Abbott. Well, I guess both then. Abbott and Associates are the employers of Andrew Fitzpatrick. He's a CPA, and this is the time of year where we get to thinking, yes, because the 15th of April is going to be here before we know it, the way time goes. The reason I thought I wanted somebody from the financial field was on the news a bit ago. They were talking about some new ideas that the government has come up with. I know this will be a shock to you, but they said that some people, they were afraid, were maybe holding back on what they should be paying the U.S. government come the 15th of April. Now, having been a housewife for 82 years, I've been in the business of, trying to get the most bang for your buck as you can, whether you're buying shoes for the kids or a gallon of milk. You would try to get a good quality thing at the best price, right? Well, and it's not much different with our taxes. We want to pay what we have to pay. That's how we operate.
Correct.
But we don't want to pay more than we have to. Well, now they've got some cockamamie idea because they thought somebody might be cheating.
Mm-hmm. Surely not.
I was taken aback by that idea. But since they brought it up, they want to go in and look at the kinds of checks you write to whom and when and why, to be sure they're getting the best bang for their buck.
Right.
So, how in the name of all that's holy did they decide that they can do that? Isn't that a little invasive?
Invasive, and I don't know how you would ever man that task to check everybody's transactions. $600 or higher is what they originally were talking about. That would be monumental. You'd have to have millions of people on staff, because most people, the way things are nowadays, the way things cost, $600, it's nothing to sneeze at, but it's not a huge amount of money.
That's right.
I'm sure most people out there have quite a few $600 plus transactions per year that go through their accounts. So I don't know. To me, it seems like just another way to have a little bit more control.
To harass you?
Exactly. Yep.
Well, Mr. Fitzpatrick, I hate to dissuade you of your noble thoughts about the government hiring people. They don't seem to have any trouble at all hiring people.
Yeah, they don't, but I will say that
getting rid of Deadwood is another story.
I will say, though, right now they say the IRS is very understaffed, and I don't know if that is a matter of, I know the pandemic with having people trying to work from home, that became a huge issue. There's a enormous backload of mail right now sitting at the IRS centers. I had actually even heard that they closed down the Fresno, California center, took all that mail and trucked it over to Kansas City. So I know about 6 months ago they were saying that they had upwards of 7 million pieces of mail that was untouched. And so it becomes a huge burden on us. We talk to a lot of people. with the IRS, with them working from home a lot, there was nobody really there to answer the phones. We have a guy in our office that, for the whole summer he was coming in, the first thing he would do in the morning was call the IRS's number, put it on speakerphone, and let it sit there. And most days would get nobody to pick up, and just sit there and let it stand on hold. So you can't get through to him on the phone. There's upwards of 7 million pieces of mail still sitting there untouched. So, we can't get through to him on the phone. We're sending in letters to hopefully try to clear things up. And all the while, these clients are still getting, and I talked to one IRS agent, 45 days if you haven't responded, even though we tried to respond, but they hadn't opened our mail. 45 days, another automatic letter gets sent. So people were, getting a 45-day letter. We respond, nothing. Getting another 45-day letter, they're concerned because the IRS's 45 days letter, they always threaten you with seizing your bank accounts, even though they don't. Very rarely do they act on that, but it says it in the letter.
That's not very good child rearing to threaten and never pull through.
And it becomes very, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that just go ahead and send the money even though they don't owe it because they're sick of being harassed with it. But it's very bad business, and I don't know how there's a taxpayer advocate service out there, but I'm sure they're inundated with people. They're supposed to be the ones that if you have a problem with the IRS, you go to them. They're supposed to have a hard line to the IRS, be able to try to mediate for you, but they're so inundated with people, trying to, they're in a really bad spot right now, so I don't know.
Well, pardon my naivete, but is there a plan in place to deal with this, extend the date, or decide they don't need any tax money?
They've extended the date 2 years in a row now. The first year we had the pandemic in 2020, they extended the date to July 15th. And then last year they extended it to May 15th. And I can't remember the exact statistic, but there was something to the effect of, in general, there's untouched returns when tax season starts back up in late January. Of 600, 800,000 is usually what they still haven't touched, and that number is like 2 or 3 million right now, so they're way behind to start this season. I don't foresee them extending the deadline again this year, just because there's, at that point they would have to blame it on themselves.
What could Plan B be?
Well, they're the government, so they don't have to. I've always said there is no customer service because they're the only game in town. So you just wait until they're done. Wait until they get caught up. It may be years down the road, I guess.
Well, they can't blame all those ships that are parked on the ocean.
Yeah. Well, no, that shouldn't be it because this is all domestic mail.
Yeah.
This
subject matter reminds me of Ronnie Reagan's famous quote. About the worst words in the world you can hear. I'm from the government, and I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
Now, I'd like to establish, Mrs. Busby, if I may for a minute, Mr. Fitzpatrick's credentials. He broke the mold in the Fitzpatrick family, known here in Logan County for being doggone good people in the construction trade. You knew they were going to get your money's worth, and you knew the job was going to be done right if Fitzpatrick had his hands on it. And young Andrew decided at an early age, well, not too early, he was a junior in high school, I guess, that maybe there was another way besides busting your back. So there are people out there who are tax preparers, and I don't want to denigrate them at all because most all of them are all very honest people and very proficient in what they do. But there's a difference between a tax preparer and a certified public accountant. So let's identify, Andrew, if I may, what it took to get you to be a certified public accountant, which is a pretty doggone good mantle to wear on your shoulders.
Yeah, yep. So the typical 4-year college degree is 120 hours of classes. When I was going through to get your CPA, you had to have 150 hours. So it was an extra year of schooling. At the time, there wasn't too stringent of requirements on what those classes were. You had to have 24 hours of accounting. I actually took a lot of my electives in finance, which has actually turned into an even better thing for me, because up at Abbott and Associates we also have a sister company called Pacesetter Financial Group, which is a registered investment advisor. So I actually get to wear two hats up there, and outside of tax time I do a lot with the investing, but that was kind of where I took my electives, and I just really enjoyed it. So I got through my 150 hours of
It just seemed like
felt
150 years.
Yes, 150 hours of schooling. At that point, you choose your own path as to how you want to study for it. So they have courses you can take, where you actually sit in a classroom setting and take a course on how to pass the CPA exam. I'm at the time when I graduated college, I was offered an internship with a firm in Bloomington called Solaski and Webb, and my intention was to take one of those courses and go right into taking my CPA exam. Well, we were doing auditing for a large public university at the time, and they told me, they're like, what we need from you is hours this summer, so we need you 40 hours a week. So I kind of put the CPA exam a little bit on the back burner, worked for Solaski and Webb actually after my internship for another year and a half. Hadn't taken my CPA yet. Got offered the job here at Abbott and Associates, took that, and then about a year into that, I started working on it. Ended up just doing a self-study. That was one of my strong points in school, was taking tests. I have probably a borderline photographic memory. I can see things and regurgitate them very well. So I bought the books to self-study. Went through there's 4 pieces to the exam. There was auditing, there was tax, there was financial, which was more of like your economics, and then there was governmental. So I took my 4 parts and passed them, and then I got my CPA license. So
I hear, though, that's a heck of an exam.
it's very tough. Yeah, it was, I want to say, 3 to 4 hours each part of dedicated sitting at a computer. When I took it, there was a mix between multiple choice questions and essay questions. So in turn, it took longer to get your results because they had to have somebody grade your essays. I believe now it is 100% multiple choice, so you get your results a lot quicker. But yeah, it was an undertaking.
Would you encourage one of your children? Now, you've got a 2 and 2 type house.
I've got 2 boys and a girl, and another girl coming real soon. So
Yeah.
That boy knows how to produce.
How is the field for women?
It's actually very good. I actually have, my sister-in-law, my older brother Sean, married Kristen Blackburn from here in town, John Blackburn's daughter. Mm-hmm. They moved up to Chicago. She started working for a firm up in Chicago called Miller and Cooper. She moved up the ranks very quickly and became a partner quite a long time ago. Is now the managing partner. So she's the top. That's
top national.
She has it's around 300 people that work for her.
Wow.
And she's the top one.
Too bad she's not smart, huh?
she's very smart. And it's a good resource to have for me to talk to and run things by.
I'm sure.
But the Miller Cooper is actually, I read in a magazine one time, not something Kristen sent me, but something I just found on my own. They are one of the largest employers for female accountants. So yeah, it's a very inclusive field. It's a very good field to go into right now. There's a need. We have a hard time when we're trying to fill a spot, trying to find somebody. So yeah.
And the government keeps creating more and more need for somebody who's a certified public accountant. Again, I want to emphasize, I don't denigrate the folks who are tax preparers. They work hard, they study hard to learn their craft, and they perform a good service. Mm-hmm. But there is a difference between a tax preparer and a certified public accountant. The taxation and it's so sophisticated today.
It is, and every time a politician runs for office, it's always they always talk about we're going to simplify the tax code, and no matter what happens so far, I've been doing it for with Solaski and Webb, and I've been doing it for 17 years. every piece of legislation that seems to go through that has any kind of financial tie to it always seems to also tie itself to the tax code. So, a lot of your credits and a lot of your stimulus and those kind of things, they always seem to go through the tax. The stimulus payments we got here with the pandemic and that, they sent you the check, but if you didn't get it or if you didn't get the correct amount, you were supposed to go through your tax preparer, let them know. They had to go and try to get that back for you. All these pieces of legislation, the Obamacare, the new QBI or the qualified business income deduction that came through when Trump was president, everything goes through the tax return and everything is a new calculation. So it just they keep adding layers of complexity to it.
Well, and with all these additions, you have to be able to regurgitate them by word.
Exactly.
And word.
And we take a lot of education for that.
Yes. Would anybody dare tackle their own taxes?
There's people that can, certainly. If you throw kids into the mix with all these credits, it's becoming a little bit harder. But there's a lot of free softwares out there that walk you through it. Now, I've gone through some free softwares myself just to know. Yep, and I would say that they're more difficult than what I go through. Now we have a tax software that we pay $20,000 a year to have to help us be more efficient, but I can see where people would go the wrong direction doing their own, because it's a lot of click here, yes or no, and then it takes you one direction, and then you're kind of going through. It's like when you used to read the books when you were a kid that pick your own adventure. It's kind of how those tax things work. If you click yes or no, or yes I do this or not, they kind of take you down another path, and it may not be the right path, and it may take you a lot of time to go backwards and get back to where you need to be. So I could see where there'd be a lot of errors there when you try to do it on your own. But at the same time, like we've talked about, the IRS not having a lot of resources, if you make the error in your favor, then I guess you're probably never going to get caught. It's when you make the error in the government's favor where you need, where you
648-5510. Our guest this morning, Mr. Andrew Fitzpatrick, a partner in the firm of Abbott and Associates, certified public accountant firm who not only does taxes, but they'll take care of your sophisticated business needs. A guy selling apples on the street won't need them, but there are a lot of today. You turn these dudes goose out there to think how they can go back and tell their constituents what a great job they're doing, and the first thing you know, they've got to come up with some sort of silly legislation, and it creates work for people like Mr. Fitzpatrick. 648-5510. This is your chance now to get a question answered, and it won't cost you $150 if you go up there or more. If you go up there, be prepared. Number one, if you go up there, take your records with you. Don't show up with a paper sack full of receipts and expect an auditor to help you out.
I bet that happens.
And I suspect that's legendary in your profession.
It is. Patty at our front desk, Patty Gazaskis, she'll let you know if somebody comes in with a box or a bag. And it's just to prepare you for what you're going to have to deal with.
The taxation problem is a pretty sophisticated matter, and you can save some money, or it may cost you an extra buck or two to have this done, but at least when April 5th or March 5th, April 15th, it used to be March, that was the Ides of March.
March 15th is still the corporate deadline, so partnerships and S corporations are due on March 15th, individuals on April 15th.
So that day's coming, and you're going to have to cough up, and if you want to do it sensibly and save 35 cents, spend $1.50 and go up and talk to Andrew Fitzpatrick of Abbott and Associates. Seriously, they perform a big service. They're not just tax preparers. They do sophisticated tax preparation and sophisticated advising. Let's talk about Abbott and Associates a little bit, the scope of your work, sir.
Sure, yeah. So, we're full service. We do auditing, we do tax, we do monthly accounting, quarterly accounting, we do payroll. That's a big part of our business. The girls downstairs auditors do a lot of payrolls for people because that's another very
Well, that's ticklish too, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Those are the ones you really don't want to mess up on. I would say that, on an individual 1040 tax return, if you have an error, it's usually not catastrophic. But when you come to the payroll tax returns, that's where they really hammer you if you don't get them correct. So
we have an income-producing feature here at WLCN. They don't just furnish Judith and I a microphone to up here and blather away a little bit and get important guests like Andrew. We have sponsors, and we're going to recognize them right now. Go ahead, Mr. Ash. Right back live in the studios here. The program, of course, is Viewpoint, appearing each Wednesday morning on WLCN, 8:15 to 0900 hours. The program who tries to bring you people from different walks of life and different matters of income, which brings us to the income word. Folks who have an income have to pay their taxes. And we have this morning with us a bright young man whom I've enjoyed down through the years, watching him grow up a little bit and seeing his successes as a professional auditor. Abbott and Associates is a firm who specializes in taking care of your taxes and also your business arrangements if you need data service. They advise you. Now, do you ever have anybody come in and say, my God, I'm going to get audited, what do I do?
we get that quite a bit.
Oh, dear.
So
Well, let me tell you how to get rid of a tax auditor.
Uh-huh.
This happened many years ago. I was in the dry cleaning business, and it happened to be we were a very busy time of the year, and I had to be out on the floor helping them finish clothing. And I was using a steamer. As you put the coat over a form and step on a pedal, and steam blows out from inside it, and that's a hot job. Anyway, I had this hotshot young auditor, and he kind of hit my door in an arrogant manner. And so I said, the proper thing to do when you get an auditor is, maybe Andy can tell you differently, give them your records and get out of their way and just let them do their work.
Yeah, the less you say, the better.
So I gave him our books and disappeared and went out on the floor to help steam. And it wasn't but a few minutes he came out and he asked me a question. He's standing right next to that steamer. And every time he'd ask me a question, I'd step on the pedal. and the steam would roll out. And he stood there a few minutes, the sweat started coming off. And he'd go disappear, and he'd come back out, and I'd wait for him. He'd ask, and I'd hit that steamer, and the steamer. And it wasn't 5 minutes. He came in, he says, I think you're okay, and he left.
So we need to invest in a steamer, is what you're telling me.
There you go.
So I got rid of the IRS. Not everybody can do that. It's a serious matter. What power do they have? Let's say I'm an investigator for the IRS, and I'm a smart young duck and think I know a lot of things, and I'm not very nice to work with.
Yep.
My wife would tell you that's the case today. In any event, an auditor X comes into a firm, and he's given the proprietor of the firm a kind of a hard time. Does the proprietor have anywhere to go besides go to his auditor and say, this is what's going on?
Yeah, no, I mean, you could try to find a way to get a level above and talk to their supervisor and that, but it's not going to get you anywhere. They're not somebody to argue with. They're somebody to be stern with as long as you're confident in yourself. A lot of the auditors today, I feel like I've, not that I have a ton of experience, but a lot of the auditors that you have generally now have a lot less experience than what you do.
Sure.
So, you can kind of guide the discussion. If you're confident in yourself, if you're stern, they're going to kind of fall in and trust you a little bit. But,
well, to start with, if you've been honest, you don't have anything to worry
exactly,
about.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as simple as that.
Exactly. Well,
And if you're a little bit on the gray side,
right,
well, maybe you sweat a little bit.
Yeah, but there are some people that are just the nervous type. You hear that, we're the auditor.
The title alone frightens.
Exactly. Well, it'd be just like if you were investigated, in a crime that you didn't commit, you're still going to be a little nervous sitting across from the investigating officer. So, that's where we kind of come in. We can be that, you can come to us, you can give us, your spiel, and we can be the mouthpiece. We can be the one that sits in between. My boss, Clayton George, there'll be times where he'll tell the person, you just sit there, be quiet. If they ask you questions, answer, with as few words as you can get the answer. But let me kind of be that middle person and the one that.
Do they ever have a hard time, the government, getting somebody to work for them? It's just like you've got a target on your back. I mean, well, here comes the IRS, Holy Friday.
Yep.
And it scares people to death.
Yeah, it's kind of like we were just talking in our break there about basketball. It's kind of like being a referee in basketball. It's a very thankless, nobody's going to praise you when you do a good job. They're only going to complain when you do a bad job. And I have to assume that being an IRS auditor would be the exact same way.
Same basket.
Because you've got two, what is a good job as an auditor? Is it getting the maximum amount of tax for your employer, or is it making the person you're auditing happy? I'm sure that if you're being evaluated on your job, it's making as much money as you possibly can for the IRS, but the person you're dealing with is always going to be on the short end of that stick.
Yeah.
It'd be very thankless, I would think.
I would be afraid. Yeah.
Yep.
That would not be a good job for me.
Not for me either.
A basic part of your operation, your modus operandi there at Abbott and Associates, is you client there, and if you agree to sign an agreement that if you're investigated, your firm will just handle that for a flat fee.
Yep.
And I think that's a nice thing because, let's face it, there's some folks who are a little shady out there. And it's a statement of fact.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain people that you don't want to offer that service to.
Yeah.
If
how do you face a person like that if you know that they're fudging?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know how you could carry out your business.
Yeah, I mean, we have to ask, our questions. We have to be confident as a firm. Now, the way you deal with it is you just tell them that they're not a good fit for you as a client if you can't trust them. So, we sit down with them. We kind of talk to them. Legally, we have them sign a piece of paper saying that everything they give us is accurate to the best of their knowledge and those kind of things.
But some people sign anything.
Yeah, well, I know. And some people are have a manipulative, they can sit there and lie to you with a straight face. So we kind of have to sit across from them and kind of get a feel for if they're a good fit for us or not. And if they're not a good fit, there's no reason to put yourself out on the line because the IRS penalties involved with, as a preparer, if they can prove that we've done something untowards, it's a $5,000 penalty.
That's pretty steep.
Well, somebody throughout their whole life of us doing their taxes may not pay us $5,000. So it's not worth it to us if we can't trust you to put ourselves out on the line and potentially have that kind of fine out there for a $200 tax return.
I've never been able to understand how anybody can just stand and bold-faced lie to another person.
Yeah.
Your credibility is down the toilet.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that in me. I assume it was probably the way I was raised or my DNA, but yeah, I don't have the ability to sit across from somebody and just.
Our mothers must have gone to the same school.
Must have, yeah. Yep.
There's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ingrained in you as a young person.
Yep.
That's why the name Fitzpatrick is so well known and recognized and respected here. They're all hard workers in that family. Mm-hmm. Every doggone one of them.
Yep.
And one of them might have a fault or two. I don't know.
There's so many of us that they're just by statistics. You got
law of averages against somebody.
It goes without saying. Not only do you have to know how to crunch numbers, but there must be a semester of Personalities 101.
Yeah.
That you have to. Human nature is a frail thing.
Right.
And each one of us has our own strengths and our own weaknesses.
Right. Well,
don't talk about my weaknesses.
I tell people, and I didn't have this training, but sometimes I almost feel like you should have a semester of psychology because you become their, psychologist, psychiatrist. You're the person that they can complain to when things aren't going right. You're the one that, especially on the investing side of things, I've found that psychology is a big part there because you have to sit across from somebody and get a feeling for risk level and how they're going to react if things don't go right. They don't tell you that when you're in school, but psychology, psychiatry, all of that stuff it becomes a part of the
some of
the
it's
job.
Pretty subtle, some of it's in your face.
Exactly. Well, it's learning on the fly, and it's kind of giving yourself trying to build yourself a database of if this person talks this way, then this is what, how they're going to react if something doesn't go right. You're really trying to build that client, as to how best to service them, to keep them happy, basically. So
you said you surprised yourself on the ride up here. We were talking, and you said you surprised yourself when you went into accounting. That wasn't that wasn't Plan A.
No. I was telling Bill. So through my first couple years of high school, 2.5, the plan was to be an electrician. I have a large portion of my family is electricians. We have carpenters. We have, we have drywall finishers and everything. But a large portion of them are electricians, and so I just assumed that was going to be my path. My younger brother, I knew he wanted to be an electrician, and I wasn't quite sure that there was enough for both of us to make a full-time thing out of it. And I always really enjoyed school. He didn't so much enjoy school. So I was like, well, maybe college is for me. So I started looking into it. Actually started my first year in college down the path of being an engineer. For a number of reasons throughout that, it didn't quite work out. So I kind of pivoted at that point, talked with my sister-in-law, who I was talking about earlier, who was an accountant already. Numbers were always my thing. I just knew I loved numbers. I loved math. And so she asked me, why don't you look at accounting? So I started doing that. I had a professor my first year named Dr. Rizaki. Ended up having him twice throughout school, and was an awesome professor. And he reached out to me outside of school, and he said, you're not an accounting major. He goes, but you are really good at this. He's like, I would have to tell you that accounting should be the way you go. So I kind of took that to heart, and at that point I was already a year into it, and I'm like, well, might as well.
As long as you had the heart of a beanpole.
Exactly. So yeah, he recognized it in me before I recognized it in myself, and so I was very thankful for that. And
yes.
Math was not a very strong subject for me at any point in time in school. 2 plus 2 was a big deal. But seriously, Professor C.A. Bailoff, Clarence A. Bailoff, kind of kept Lincoln College afloat during the tender years. A bright man, very nice gentleman. He was also our basketball coach. Okay. And he taught
He's kind of
math
like
up
you.
there. Yeah. And his good old stick was he'd get a first new class in Algebra 101, and he'd prove to you on the blackboard that 2 plus 2 did not equal 4. And I wish I knew that trick today. But he's proven to, and doggone well he's wrong. Right. But he's got on the board in front of me that 2 plus 2 does not equal 4. Okay. And that was a little stick that
I'd like to see that. Yeah.
Kind of got your attention the first day in class. Yeah. Bright man, wonderful. Yeah. He and Mrs. Bailoff were wonderful people. Part of the Lincoln College heritage here in this community. When somebody gets a letter from the IRS, they start shaking a little bit normally. That's just something psychologically about that. Right. It's just another piece of mail. Yep. Yeah. And
like you said earlier, if you have nothing to hide, you technically shouldn't have to worry.
So what is the process if client A walks in there someday, says and he's not been a client, so he's a stranger to you. Yep. And so where do you take him from that point on? Yeah, if he comes in with an IRS letter, or if he just comes in... Let's just say he's got he says, I don't know what to do with this. Yeah. And you don't know a thing about them, Joe Smith, as far as you're concerned. Yeah. So at that point, we would sit down and talk to him and say, what's the nature of your income? Where... Let me see the notice. Let me kind of get a feel for, what you got going on here, and then just start asking pointed questions as to, they're saying you didn't include this. A lot of times you'll get it. It'll be a person that's working that maybe takes a draw from a retirement account and it's not a part of their normal income, but for whatever reason they left a job and their retirement rolled out to them and it was $2,000, say, and it went into their bank account and they didn't think anything of it. Well, come tax time, you got to pay tax and penalty on an early withdrawal from a retirement account, and that's one that I see a lot of times where people kind of forget, that was back in January, I didn't even think about that, and so then the IRS knows anytime a form W-2, 1099, 1099-R, anytime any of those are filed, they're sent to you and they're sent to the IRS. So they can build, if you're not in business for yourself, they can pretty much build your tax return on the income side, and they'll tell you this is what we have and this is what you reported.
explain to us the discrepancy. And sometimes you can explain it to them. Sometimes you can say, well, yes, I had a 1099-R, but it was rolled over to another retirement account, so I didn't need to pay tax on it. And you just have to send them the proof that it rolled to another retirement account, and then you go from there. So, sometimes they'll ask you on the deduction side, they may send you one just asking you to verify, hey, your charitable deductions were really high for the amount of income that you have. Can you show us proof that these are actually all charitable deductions, things like that. So,
how deeply can they go into your finances? You say that they could come to you and say that your contributions outweigh your income, and of course that wouldn't work for very long.
It shouldn't. Yeah, it shouldn't.
No,
but it can. There can be retired people that have built a huge amount of wealth for themselves, don't have a lot of income in their retirement days, but they've built a large nest egg, and then they're willing to give it away. So we've seen it. I've seen people where, if you just looked at it from an income and expense standpoint, you would say, wow, so you made $40,000 this year and you gave away $50,000. That doesn't make sense. But, we send off the documentation and it is correct.
And it could be.
Yep.
It could be.
Yep.
But how many of us plain people, you might as well be speaking Italian when you're using these terms with me.
Yep.
How many of us really know what we're doing?
I would say, well, we talked earlier about the complexity of the tax code. I would say very, very few know everything that they're doing or exactly what they're doing. When you choose to do it on your own, there's probably some things that you're going to miss. Whether they be in your favor or not, but there are going to be some things that, working in the industry all the time, we do a lot of education, so we know most of.
Now, are there refresher courses, Andrew?
Yeah,
for people in your profession?
Yep. So as a CPA, I have to have
some doggone stupid law, and it's like, hey, well, this business of investigating your check writing facilities.
Yep. Yeah.
Now the figure is what, $1,200 now, or $600?
$600. Yeah.
$600. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, is what they're throwing around. So,
is it all right for the bank to go to the Bank XYZ, the government go to Bank XYZ and check my account?
Yeah, they have that ability. They can
They're
seize
still
your
into my
accounts.
business, in
Right.
other words.
Yep, I know. Yeah.
But sometimes things cannot appear to be what they really are.
Yeah.
Maybe you've got a dependent child somewhere that you have to send $600 to right along.
Yep. Yeah.
Do they cut you any slack?
Well, they do. Yeah, if that is the case, I was really floored by the fact that they set that number at 600. Now that isn't in law. That hasn't passed, and I don't think it ever will. But the $600.
Well, the politicians be scared to death to be thrown out.
I know. Yeah. Well, the $600 level just seems so asinine that's the number they would look at. I know, like, if you go to the bank and you cash a check, and if it gets to the $10,000 level, has always been the level where the bank has to report, that you've made a transaction at $10,000. That's a little more understandable. $600, like
that
I said,
hasn't happened in my life. In case you're interested.
Yep. But $600 there, you'd have to quadruple your staff to start chasing around those $600. And like you said, if you give your child $600, you can give your child up to $15,000 in a year without any gift taxing ramifications or anything. So I guess at that point, if they wanted to send you a letter saying, hey, you had a $600 transaction, you would just write them back and say, I'm
glad my boys were busy working. They didn't hear that.
They didn't hear that you can get $15,000. Yep.
Seriously. You're coming to a time when you're going to have to pay Uncle Sam something. We can't run this government on stamps.
Yep.
The fact is that deductions, contributions, charities, and so forth, this is the time of year when people start thinking about that.
Yep.
I would urge you folks that are on local charities here, for instance, the food pantry, for one, just pops into my mind, and there are other local, your own local churches and so forth. They keep that money here in Golden County rather than ship it to XYZ, although XYZ, Tunnels to Towers and Wounded Warriors are two of my favorite charities.
Yeah, and St. Jude's is one of mine. So there are good ones out there that are
Oh, yeah.
that are
Yes.
national,
Yes.
but there are national
So
ones
loosen
out
up,
there that
folks.
aren't.
This is the time you can save yourself some money. You're not spending money, you're saving yourself some money. So
Yep.
think about that as you get your tax papers
I bet
in order.
lots of times you've saved somebody more than your fee
I would say
by
most
hiring
times.
somebody who knows what they're doing.
I would say most times that is the case. You know, a lot of times we'll have people bring in their returns. You know, let's say it's the first year that anybody's doing it. They've been doing it on their own. We always have them bring in 2 years because we can go back and get any mistakes. If they were in your favor, we can go back 2 years and get them for you by filing an amended tax return. So we check that, and a lot of times it is that there's something else to go back there and get. So
The deadline, April 15th in this case, it's been quite a few years now. They've moved it from March to April. And some people wait till like April the 10th to say, oh, God,
yeah.
I get my taxes ready.
Yeah.
And they'll call you and want an appointment. Now,
Yeah.
number one, you already have appointments with your regular clients,
Right.
and they have to understand that. So people have to be a little patient.
Yeah.
They also have to have their own responsibilities.
right, yeah, we try to get everybody in there by April 1st. You know, we know some people travel. You know, there may be people that winter in Florida and they don't get back till April 1st. But our standard is to say we would really appreciate it if you get everything into us by April 1st and give us that last 2 weeks to get everything cleaned up and make sure we have time to file. Everybody that wants to be filed. Now, you can file an extension. That gives you until, for an individual, it gives you till October 15th to file. But your tax liability has to be paid in by April 15th. So there's a misconception there that, I'll just extend. I owe $5,000. I'll just extend until October 15th. Well, the money has to be paid in by
It's
April
not gonna
15th.
work that way.
It's just the filing that gets to wait until October 15th. So
Well, having your tax prepared by a professional, trained, educated person that knows what that's not an expense, that's an investment in yourself.
Yep.
And so I got a couple of seconds left, so we'd like to close and talk about Abbott and Associates. Mr. Andrew Fitzpatrick, go right ahead.
Yeah,
Andrew.
so Abbott and Associates, we've been around for a long time. You may even know the history better than me on that. I know Emery Gaffney was involved originally.
I was his first client, I
Okay.
think.
Yep. And then Mike Abbott took over after that generation was done. Mike actually passed the year before I started working there, so I never got to work with him.
That was too bad.
Yep. And that was 2006, so I started in 2007. So yeah, we're full service. We do everything. We do businesses. We do individuals. Tax, accounting, payroll. We'd have, like I said, an investment side as well too, so we can take care of your retirement accounts, your investing accounts, those kind of things. So yeah, we do a little bit of everything, and there's no task that we're not willing to at least try to tackle, and we'll let you know if it's not something that we can accomplish for you. So
Thank you very much, Andrew
Yeah,
Fitzpatrick.
thank you. Thanks for having me.
A quick story on air. We talked about this coming up this morning. Andrew's grandfather was a storied man in Logan County. He was a Western Union representative. He'd sit there and take messages, and in those days, it was just long before computers and all that. And they'd print it out on strips of paper, and he'd paste it on a form and get on his bicycle and deliver it. Mm-hmm. During World War II, he sat there taking government messages, and he took the message from the government that his own son had been killed. It's a storied part of the Fitzpatrick family. Thank you, Andrew
thank
Fitzpatrick.
you. Thank you.
Boy, that ruined